The information shared on Light Body Radio is for educational and informational purposes only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed healthcare provider, or qualified wellness practitioner with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or health goal. Dr. Lara May, her guests, and affiliates do not claim to cure, prevent, or treat any condition and are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are responsible for your own health decisions and that any actions you take based on the content are at your own discretion and risk. Thank you for tuning in to Light Body Radio.
Welcome to Light Body Radio, where science meets soul and healing gets multidimensional. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, functional medicine pharmacist, master intuitive Reiki channel, and certified life and health coach. Here we decode root causes, transmute stuck energy, and empower your full spectrum healing journey, body, mind, and light body. This isn't just wellness, it's awakening, grounded in science, guided by spirit, and designed for your evolution. Let's rise and radiate. Welcome to the next level of you. Hello and welcome to Light Body Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Lara May, and today we have with us Craig Meriwether. He provides hypnotherapy for spiritual healing, guiding clients through past life discovery, spirit world exploration, and deeper connections with guides and ancestors. As founder of Sacred Mystery, he offers one-on-one past life regression sessions, workshops, and multi-day retreats, both nationally and internationally, helping people unlock transformation and soul wisdom. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Lara. I really appreciate being invited on, and such a unique topic. And so, I'm happy to discuss it.
Yeah. So tell us how you came to be interested in past life regressions and practicing it yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of the short version of it. Kind of two big aspects of my life growing up was one, I struggled a lot with depression and anxiety. And, this is back in the 1980s, so it wasn't any way to research things on the internet, or they even have the SSRI drugs at that point, the Prozacs and things, that didn't come out until the late 90s. And so it was really just whatever book you might be able to find at the library or the bookstore, or whatever talk therapist you might find in the yellow pages. Mm-hmm. And, as a teenager, probably not going to do any of that stuff. It's just one of those things where you're just like, well, I guess this is just the way you're supposed to feel, because that's the way I was feeling. But in the 90s, as I, went to college and just, my worldview opened up more about life and got more information about just being a human being, I guess. I started getting into the personal growth things, Tony Robbins, that kind of stuff in the 1990s, and I really started to work on myself. But I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And that paired with the other big aspect of my life was kind of spirituality. I grew up in the church, meaning was born into the Episcopal Church, which is kind of Catholicism light, and the Protestant Church. And I really like the ceremony and the ritual of it all, the robes and the candles and all that. But then I also went to a Baptist-run school from 6th grade to 12th grade. And these are actually two very divergent kind of philosophies around Christianity.
They are.
Yeah, they don't
very different.
And so I had all this, and what I was noticing is like I could get to that mountaintop high with more spiritual aspects. Because, growing up in a Christian home, I'm not drinking, I'm not doing drugs or anything, but what I could do was find that kind of blissfulness sometimes through more spiritual means. Again, that kind of mountaintop retreat high. And so that's what I linked it to, was more spiritual work. And so that aspect of it also was a part of my life, especially kind of moving away from home and going to college and just, meeting other people and learning about the world and other cultures. and going to festivals and seeing dance and eating food and seeing, hearing music and seeing their martial arts and taking a Zen meditation class and all this kind of stuff opened my worldview, just got wider and wider, wider. And as you learn about other people and other places in the world, you learn about their philosophies of life as well as their spirituality and their traditions. And that's where the whole idea around reincarnation started coming up and past lives. And so one of the things that came about in terms of my personal growth work was something that kept getting mentioned was hypnotherapy. And so I actually started using hypnotherapy in my own life to deal with some of the issues I've been dealing with and resolve that depression and grief and anxiety. As well as I found you could also use that in a more spiritual way as well, using those more, and I like to use the word altered state of consciousness, but what we're really talking about is the alpha and theta brainwave states. And this is just something natural that we move in and out of. I'm not talking about using ayahuasca or maybe LSD or anything, plant medicines or chemistry to alter your state of consciousness. I'm just talking about going from the beta brainwave state where you're consciously aware of this present moment, focused on your task, maybe at work, at school, at home, and then just kind of drifting off. Your mind drifts off to the future, what's going to happen this weekend, things about what happened in the past, the vacation you took, or whatever. Your mind drifts off, and in a basic way, basically what happens is the brain just slows down how fast it's processing information. Basically, you move out of the brainwave state, firing those brain cells at about 18, 20 cycles per second, down to the alpha brainwave state, firing about 12 cycles per second. And so it's just like being bored back in high school math class. You altered your state of consciousness by daydreaming out the window. You don't really hear the teacher anymore. You don't hear the kids anymore. You just drift off. Well, that's the state of hypnosis. There's nothing magical or mystical about it in that way. But by quieting down that conscious level of mind, you can access these other parts of the unconscious and what some call the super conscious level of mind, your higher self, or those more spiritual states. And so all that kind of combined into the two things that I was interested in. One, relieving my own hurt and pain, as well as my interest in the more spiritual states. And I sort of, again, more of a long story, maybe for another time, but sort of had my own spontaneous past life regression memory while kind of having a spiritual meditative experience with a friend, doing some meditation work. And then I had this spontaneous, and that interested me even more because now I was like, well, okay, well, maybe there's more to this. And so I researched more about that. And one thing leads to another. And later in life, I pivoted to, study hypnotherapy because it's a huge part of my life.
Were there certain, were there certain teachers or mentors that you found along the way?
Well, in terms of, it certainly, to put it back to the original work I was doing was a lot of Tony Robbins stuff, back in the early 90s. That's when his big book came out, the early 90s, Awaken the Giant Within.
Yeah.
And so the personal growth movement really started blowing up. And then Oprah started her show somewhere around there in the 80s and 90s. It was getting super popular. She talking all sorts of things positive and self-growth and self-care and all that kind of stuff. And not in the sense that I was spending every day watching Oprah and reading Tony Robbins, but it's just like you start hearing this stuff. And, And the zeitgeist of the times was, oh, you're allowed to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And here are some great techniques on how to do that. And so that was a big part of it. And then when I went to train for hypnotherapy, I chose the Hypnotherapy Academy of America. It's a great school, training facility. So you actually go there and sit in a classroom with 25, 30 other people. And this isn't just like a history class at college where you go for like 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. This is 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And so it's real intensive work. training in hypnotherapy, learning about the scientific validity behind these techniques you're learning. Maybe you see a demonstration at the front of class. Then you break up into small groups. You start working with each other with this stuff. And the reason I really wanted to go to this school is, one, is this extraordinary reputation, but there's 5 modules, and the first 3 modules, and they're 2 weeks each, so 10 weeks total, 500 hours of training in hypnotherapy. The first 3 are just clinical hypnotherapy, training around trauma and helping people release the hurt and the pain, and the things that may be causing the anxious feelings, the nervousness, the stress, the anger. So dealing with trauma and things like that, maybe even from early childhood. That's the first 6 weeks, just clinical hypnotherapy. The module 4 is medical hypnosis. That's like pain control and healing acceleration, that kind of thing. How to help somebody if they need to have some major dental work and they're allergic to the lidocaine or the novocaine or something. How you can do pain control and healing acceleration, immune system boosting, that kind of thing. And that was, some of the trainers were physicians. Dr. Robert Sapien, Dr. Joaquin Dulce, neurosurgeon, literal brain surgeon, one of the teachers of the medical hypnosis. But the last module, module 5, was past life regression. So you learn about trauma. You learn about how the body may carry hurt and pain. You know, the famous book, Body Keeps the Score. And just as a 70-year-old and maybe still carrying the hurt and pain of something that happened when they were 5 or 6 years old, even though that was potentially 60, 65 years ago. What if you take it in a more spiritual direction and you're holding on to this hurt and pain from a past life? And that's where the conversation gets really interesting, and that, you know, and that's where even 8 hours, 8-hour podcast might not be enough to really get into the real depth of this. But when you're looking at this kind of work, what was fascinating to me about the training was that you got this foundation of learning how to help somebody with the trauma and the hurt and pain, and then moved it into a more spiritual direction by the end of it. So you already have 400 hours of training before you went in a more deeper spiritual direction. And and then on top of all the other continuing education and Roy Wood and Brian Weiss and all the other people,
Right.
at conferences and things like that. But I just went to a Brian Weiss workshop last summer.
Oh, cool.
82 years old.
I know, it's amazing. He was one of my early mentors, so that's why I asked.
Yeah. And so of course his books, but probably in terms of this work, the one that really resonated with me is Michael Newton.
Okay.
And his book, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. And just, real quick background on Michael Newton. I find his books fascinating. And the Michael Newton Institute's still out there doing research and work. They just released a book a couple of years ago, Wisdom of the Soul. But Michael Newton was a psychotherapist. He passed away in 2011. And in 1969, working with somebody who was dealing with some hurt and pain, some trauma, and he thought, well, hope he did some regression work and do some hypnosis and move back to childhood and see if we can create some resolution. Well, they did this hypnotherapeutic process of regressing back to childhood, but the guy kept going. He went back past childhood, past being a newborn, and went all the way back to soul state, the soul world, what Michael Newton eventually called life between lives. And this guy did his deep healing work there. And so Michael Newton was fascinated by this. It was like, well, can other people do this? Is this a thing? Was this more symbolic, metaphoric healing that the subconscious mind created? Was this a real thing? He was very curious and wanting to see if other people could achieve this state and create the healing. And so he started working with people because it was somewhat accidental. So could you do this on purpose? And he started working with people in the early 70s, and he developed a protocol on how to get people back to this state and help them create that healing. And what he also found is people were having similar experiences to each other. This is the 1970s. There's no, of course, internet. There's no WhatsApp or cell phones or texting or anything like that. So these people aren't communicating with each other. Yeah, they're from different walks of life, maybe different parts of the country,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe different parts of the world, and yet they're having similar experiences, regardless of age, regardless of background or culture. They're having similar experiences of being a soul, being a spirit, and connecting with their soul family, or connecting with their spirit guide, or the council of elders, or uh, going to the spiritual library, going to the healing place, or going to view more different past lives, or
Mm-hmm.
your current life, and finding out more about your purpose and your mission and your ultimate goal in this life. And one aspect that people came back with was that we come to this realm, this classroom of planet Earth, again and again, to learn and grow and to develop as souls. And we may be carrying hurt and pain from a different life because maybe resolution didn't happen. Because just like going to school, it's like, okay, well, if you're in college and you don't, chemistry class doesn't go well, you're gonna have to take that chemistry class over again. Or maybe
Mm-hmm.
you have to go to summer school, or maybe you need a tutor, and so doesn't necessarily mean just because you're here that everything maybe goes the way you're supposed to. It's a training ground.
Right.
It's a computer simulation. There's some theories out there about the computer simulation theory. And there may be reason to, like, okay, well, let's try this scenario this way this time. Because last time these complications came up and all this, or you need to work with this one person, and that's why maybe you're noticing certain relationship patterns coming up again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if you were able to find a way to resolve those so you can then kind of graduate and move on to the next lessons you need to learn? Or, maybe it's more like just learning different perspectives on a certain situation or circumstance, or learning, teaching that you have to go through. Sort of like abundance and wealth. Let's be very general about it. Abundance and wealth. Of course, it'd be helpful to be rich and have the yacht and the private jet and the house in the south of France and apartment overlooking Central Park and all that stuff. So it'd be very helpful to understand that kind of wealth and that kind of abundance. But would it also not be helpful in order to understand wealth and abundance to live on the streets of Calcutta, or and have understand that kind of poverty and that kind of being destitute, or maybe living paycheck to paycheck, or these are all ways of learning about wealth. What is wealth like back in the 1500s? What is wealth like back in 3 BC? How is it different, and how do you learn through that?
Mm-hmm.
And so Michael Newton did about 20 years worth of research all through the 70s, all through the 80s. He worked with thousands upon thousands of people, 365 days a year. He's working with thousands of people over 20 years. And that's when he released his first book, Journey of Souls, in 1992. He then did another decade's worth of research, where thousands of people or so, and released the second book, kind of volume 2, Destiny of Souls, which is twice as thick as the first book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's through those books that we understand more about what soul life is like and people's experiences of it. And again, it's not just like you work with one or two people,
Right.
and this is they're channeling this information. You work with tens of thousands of people over the course of 30 years, on top of they're still producing books.
Yeah.
From the Michael Newton Institute in the early 2000s, and they're still doing research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, since he's passed, I think they've released 2 or 3 books since he's passed, and of just new research of
Mm-hmm.
experiences. So, if in terms of anybody that I model my work, is probably his, because of the healing that can happen while in that soul world, that soul state. So while it's fascinating and it's interesting to have that curiosity and experience around what past lives have I lived, of course, and that's a legitimate and a very valid way of coming to this work. It's just having curiosity. You read Brian Weiss, you read Many Lives, Many Masters, you read Dolores Cannon,
Mm-hmm.
my book, and you get a curiosity of, well, wonder what my past lives are. And that's great. That's a great way to come to this work. But it's also like, what if there's something that you're still holding on to from that past life? Just like somebody may be holding on to something from when they were 5 or 6 years old, very traumatic, growing up in an unsafe home. Well, what if, in a certain similar way, you're holding on to something from a past life? And that's where the training I have, I like the way they created that training in the Hypnotherapy Academy because the core training is helping people release that hurt and pain. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you have any, but if that comes up, it can be very helpful to release it in that state.
Yeah. So I'm a student of Dolores Cannon, and I'm certified in her process and methodology. And what I love about all of these different teachers is that essentially when they're publishing their work, they're publishing the same themes, and this, and so I think that again, like brings validity to what can seem like very esoteric and very woo-woo, but there, I think I love this, especially for those of us that are seekers about, like what does happen when we're not here in this physical body, this human body. And so I think that also dispels some of that it can help even the biggest of skeptics at least say that, okay, there are patterns here. And, these are all independent people, like you said, like even the teachers themselves, like Brian Weiss was in Florida, Dolores Cannon was in Arkansas. I don't know where your mentor is, but but they're helping thousands and thousands of people and all seeing similar patterns, whether it's you go spontaneously to that space in between lives or or you're maybe guided with intention to a specific time or place. It varies, but the outcome is still the same, which is healing. Which is beautiful.
Yeah. And what I find fascinating, especially I with Michael Newton and Brian Weiss, is that they are very left brain analytical academics. And we're not versed in the more spiritual side of things, if you excuse the expression, the more woo-woo side of stuff.
Right, yeah.
But they were curious enough to look into it because they're scientific people. Instead of shutting it down as, well, that's impossible or that can't happen, it's like, well, what if? And that's a great question to ask in science, or how can, or why is this? And even with Brian Weiss, you read that Many Lives, Many Masters book that came out in 1988. But that person he was working with, Catherine, I believe her name was, it's been a while since I read that book. He was working with her for like a year because Brian Weiss, he's got a master's degree in chemistry from Columbia. He's got a medical degree from Yale. And then he went into psychiatry, and he was head of psychiatry at Mount Sinai in Miami. And he was working with this a patient of his for a year. And he just couldn't find a way to help resolve her, the issues she was dealing with, help her find healing through what she was going through, the anxiety and the stress and the overwhelm, the hurt and pain. And he came to finally decide, well, maybe we should do some regression work using hypnotherapy. And kind of very similar to Michael Newton's situation, she kept going past childhood and went into a past life, and the past life of Egypt back in, I forget when, but 5 BC or 100 BC or something like that. And at first, once again, Brian Weiss just thought, oh, this is a construct of the subconscious mind to find a symbolic way of finally resolving this. And he said, fine, let's heal the way the subconscious mind needs to heal. And so they worked with it a little bit more. They did a few more past life regression sessions. Again, this analytical academic Dr. Brian Weiss thinking it's more of a symbolic metaphoric healing, just like Freud talks about and Carl Jung and Milton Erickson and all that. Subconscious mind speaks to us in dreams and metaphor and symbolism. And I thought, well, this is the way she's creating this healing. Well, she was getting really detailed information about Egypt, like Egyptologist, archaeologist kind of detailed information. This is 1980. Our internet was the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Right.
Whatever we, just, a regular, quote unquote, regular person, this is the information we had on Egypt, is wherever you could find in the Encyclopedia Britannica. But she was getting extraordinarily detailed information that he could verify with his archaeologist, Egyptologist friend from Yale and whatnot. And so she's getting highly detailed information. She created extraordinarily deep healing, emotional healing, which he kind of had to come to the conclusion, like, the only way she's creating this deep healing is by resolving a real issue from a real time in her life, even it being this extraordinary past life she's talking about. So she's getting not only detailed information about the time and place that she shouldn't have, that only a very handful, a handful of people should know, who have studied this for 10 and 20 years. And she was doing extraordinary deep healing work emotionally and mentally. And she started getting detailed information about Brian Weiss's own life, like private life. Again, this is 1980. There's no internet. There's no way to look up on social media. And even if she was stalking him, all this stuff that happened in his life happened in a different place, in a different where he grew up, or where he first started living, because he had a child die very early in life, like 1 year old, something like that. And she knew about that. And a couple of family members, a couple of doctors, not a whole lot of people knew this. And she's giving detailed information about the stuff that happened decades previously. And so finally he had to come to the conclusion, sort of like the Sherlock Holmes thing. It's like you remove the impossible, whatever's left over, however improbable, has to be the answer. And so this analytical, academic left brain person, like, well, the only thing that makes sense is that she's having a real past life experience. And so about 8 years later, he releases the book Many Lives, Many Masters, and that really set off and I think because it comes from such an academic kind of viewpoint, as opposed to the more spiritual side of things, it comes from a more academic viewpoint from a medical doctor, that set off the kind of modern day past life regression therapeutic movement, if that you can call this a movement. And then a few years later, Michael Newton and his Journey of Souls comes out from another doctor. And so I think basing this in science, that's what my book's about, the Past Lives Guidebook, is more about the science of this. And what is the evidence that this is real? Because I have my own skepticism about it. I love spirituality, but I also am more of the X-Files. I want to believe. I don't necessarily do believe in a lot of this stuff. So I like looking into it. And is it possible that we can really access this information? And it's not a metaphor or a symbolic construct of the subconscious mind to find healing or build confidence or something else. And just looking at all the evidence, even maybe the government research into remote viewing, showing that consciousness is non-local. And if you haven't heard about that, that's a whole another 3-hour podcast on remote viewing. But basically the Soviet Union back in the late 60s wanted to weaponize psychic ability so they could look at the Pentagon, the war plans, troop movements, underground bunkers, things like this. It's concerned the CIA, and long story short, they found some researchers to help them look into psychic ability, and they started calling it remote viewing because they could move consciousness across locations, even underground, and look into underground bunkers. And what they also found is they could move forward and backwards in time, so that they're showing consciousness is non-local, meaning it's not imprisoned within this skull of ours, within this brain of ours, but this brain seems to be more of a receiver and transmitter, like an antenna.
Right. Yeah. And it's not anchored in this exact time and this place. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the government spent 20 years before it was found out, due to a Freedom of Information Act in 92, 93, something like that. And so all this information came out, and everybody got real embarrassed that the government was spending millions of dollars and decades of research time on something as ridiculous as remote viewing. And they claimed they shut it down, but I'm guessing if it really worked, which they proved that it did. In fact, they did one extraordinary one in 1975. The Soviet Union was building something in a factory, airplane hangar, warehouse thing, huge. They could see the movements due to satellite images. They could see they're doing something. They're building something. They wanted to know what was in that factory, that warehouse. What were they building? And so they had somebody remote view in there, and the guy described the world's largest submarine, like aircraft carrier sized submarine, which they thought would be impossible to work, to operate. It had 20 torpedo silos, which is ridiculous. You don't have 20 torpedo silos. And it was built really far away from the ocean. And you build a big aircraft carrier, you don't build it, in Las Vegas and then get it to the sea. You build it right at the ocean, and then you drop it into the ocean. Well, it seemed impossible. So what they actually had the remote viewer do is look into the future and see how are they going to get this submarine from this hangar to the ocean. And he looked into the future about 6 months, and he said they're going to start digging trenches. They're going to dig trenches, they're going to pull it in. And that's exactly what they did. 6 months later, they started digging trenches, and they pulled at the time, the world's largest submarine with 20 torpedo 5.0 things. And it was extraordinary. And it's like, this is the information they were getting right at the beginning of their work. And so again, if they were getting real information, all they did was change the name of the program and moved it to the offices across the hallway. They still got to be doing it.
Yeah.
So you got the government showing consciousness is non-local and can move throughout time and location and place, on top of research around the holographic universe, or is it the computer simulation theory, or is it the multiverse? And it's all this extraordinary information, especially information around even the brain nowadays, and whether the brain is the storehouse of information and memory, or is it an antenna tapping into something else? Not only like I got my phone right here. I have all the information of the world in my phone. Well, it's not in my phone, is it? I'm pulling it in from somewhere else. Yeah, I have a couple pictures. I got a couple of songs on my phone. But the information I gain from and communicating back and forth with people is not in the phone. It's being transmitted through this phone. This phone acts like a big, gigantic antenna pulling in information. So that's kind of what some research is saying the brain is doing. Specifically, maybe more like pineal gland. Again, another 3-hour conversation right there. And so that's what my book's all about, is about what's the biology of this? What's the brain doing? What's the pineal gland doing? What's the theories around consciousness and being non-local and the remote viewing research of the government? And is this a computer simulation, which would fit the theory that we're coming back here and again to learn and to grow and to develop?
Yeah.
Maybe with the same group of people.
Yeah. And
I mean, to you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also so fascinating that the brain itself can make its own chemistry. It has its own way of making its own chemistry of these spirit molecules like DMT, or so yes, you can have the ritual and the experience of plant medicine, whichever plant you choose to to partake or to try or have that ceremony with. But the brain can also make those chemicals without that exogenous ingestion, which is also fascinating.
Yeah. Well, it's that idea that the reason morphine works is because the receptors on our cells already are there to receive morphine that the brain can create. It's just you can't copyright and patent the brain chemistry, so they make it in a lab, and then they can patent it and charge you for something you can already do yourself, which is, again, where a lot of that pain management and hypnotherapy comes from. It's not that we're, disguising the pain or masking the pain. We're tapping into your own ability to create morphine-like chemistry within your brain and send it to the places that need it, that may be causing you physical pain.
Right.
And the reason that is that chemistry gets in the bloodstream and it finds the cells with the right receptors and gives the computer code or the message to calm down this pain. That's what morphine does. And of course, all the other kind of medicines out there, they work because our brains already created.
Yeah.
So we're just mimicking what the brain already can do. And same with what you're just saying with the plant medicine. In a certain sense, our brains can already create that and allow us to have those experiences. It may be a little more colorful and a little more intense using ayahuasca or LSD or something else. But the reason that works, otherwise it would just sense it as junk and it would eliminate it. Every time we went to the bathroom, but the reason it works and we have those experiences is because the cells are accepting it, because it senses it as familiar.
Yeah. Fascinating. I love it. So going back to the hypnotherapy piece, what is it about the human brain that you've discovered or that you think or maybe hypothesize that is this piece in our healing and our resolution of patterns, trauma, that sort of thing? Like, is it something that our human brains need? Do we need that story, that attachment to the quote unquote reason why?
Mm.
That link?
Yeah, that's a really great question. That's really interesting. Um, I may just depend on your interest as a soul this time around, or what it
Mm,
is you're here to learn. Why are
mhm,
some people very much interested? Why are some people fascinated by the books of Dolores Cannon, the work of Dolores Cannon, or Michael Newton, or Brian Weiss, or anybody else?
mhm,
Again, it's sort of like thinking about music. Why do you like this music as opposed to that music? There's something that connects you to a certain era, a certain style of music, a certain type of TV show, or a certain sport. So why would you be attracted to spirituality, or even a certain kind of spirituality? And it just, maybe this time around, it's important for you to grow in this way and discover more about it for your learning and growth as a soul. And maybe this time around, it's like, okay, you need to go in deeper in this way.
mm, mhm,
In your humanness, in your human body, you need to learn more about this, because maybe in the next life, you're going to need it to advance even further.
I like
Even
that.
though,
Yeah.
even though in your next life, you may be back in history. It's sort of
Mhm,
like a theater group a theater group doesn't like do their year's worth of plays in chronological order. They don't start with a Greek tragedy in January and then go to a Shakespeare play in March and then go to a play from the 1800s in June, and go, and by the end of the year they're doing something from the early 2000s. They jump around. They may
mhm,
start off in January with a new modern play that was written last year and won the best new play award or something. And then they'll do Shakespeare in March. And then they'll go to a play in the 1960s. And then they'll go to a Greek tragedy. They just go where they're feeling. Maybe there's a thread throughout this entire year. Maybe they're just, this is the play we want to do. And it's sort of like what Michael Newton talks about in his books through other people's experiences, is that we have this soul group, this soul family. That's not like a theater troupe, maybe of 8, 9 actors. And you decide, okay, in January, we're going to do this play. And here's how these characters are going to go from act 1 to act 3 and how they're change and develop. And here's who's going to play what role. And here's the costumes. They'll do that play, and they'll take a break. And then March, they'll decide on another play and who's going to play what character and what role. And here are the costumes we're going to wear, and here's how these characters are going to develop from act 1 to act 3. Totally different time period, totally different place in the world, totally different characters. Yet they're all played by the same actor or the same
mhm.
group of actors. They're just playing different roles. And in one play, actors may play mother and son, and in the next play, they're best friends, and in the next play, they're employer or something.
Mhm.
And so it's not that um, they are those characters. They're just playing a role in order for these characters to learn and to grow in a certain way. So by act 3, it's like, okay, this is how they've advanced, hopefully.
Mm.
And we just keep coming back in order to learn and grow. Sort of like we get dropped into first grade and we're all heading towards our master's degree, in life or love or
Yeah.
passion or whatever. And we're just moving up together, maybe with the same teacher, even
Yeah.
supervisor, entire thing. And so,
So why is that time between lives so important?
yeah, well, I think that's where we can get a lot of clarification and
Mm.
a lot of healing. Is when we're doing past life regression, when I do a session with somebody, whether it's a shorter one or a longer one, with Dolores Cannon's work with the QHHT, those are like 3-4 hours long sessions.
Oh, yeah, at
And
minimum.
that's the kind of sessions Michael Newton was doing, 3 or 4 hours. And so the idea behind a longer session is just it's more information you can gain with
Mhm.
somebody, and so you can have this real in-depth past life regression memory and understand more about that past life and how it may be affecting your current life potentially. But it's in that soul world as you move out of that timeline of that past life and up into soul world, that life between lives during that break between classes, kind of summer break up there between levels of school, is you can create that healing, that recharge and reset your spirit energy or your essence or however you want to call it. And great healing can happen there, as well as great insights, and again, into your purpose, into your mission, into your ultimate goals here on Earth in this time around.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other past lives, not only the one you just experienced, are there any other ones that kind of feed into and kind of create this thread of, again, like maybe like a theater troupe? Every play, even though one's a Greek tragedy and one's a Shakespearean and one's from the 1960s, but there's a thread of love lost or love gained or compassion or empathy or how to deal with wealth or something.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're from different time periods, different characters in different places in the world, maybe there's a thread connecting all those plays together in some way. And so maybe that's it. Is there a group of lives you've lived recently or just here and there that all somehow connect together? Sort of just like taking history or class or mathematics.
Yeah.
Mathematics is a good one. You just don't start writing those crazy equations in the chalkboard, like good.
Most of us not.
Yeah, and most of us not. We all have to start in first grade with 2 + 2 = 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to second grade, we learn about subtraction. We go to third grade, we learn our times tables. In fourth grade, we learn about division. And then in high school, we're learning about algebra and calculus and trigonometry. And then, if you want, you go get your master's degree in mathematics and you write those crazy Stephen Hawking's equations on the chalkboard,
Yeah.
You just don't start with it. You have to grow and learn. If you could think of every grade as a life, it's like, that's a lot of learning you had to do to master mathematics. So what's it going to take to master love or compassion or empathy or wealth and abundance or, fill in the blank?
Yeah.
And so
is this something that you recommend people do on a regular basis, having these sessions? Or, I mean, obviously people can have profound healing from just one session.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've seen it myself as well as the practitioner. But I also know, like, if you can have that kind of healing with one session, why not more?
Yeah. Well, definitely. And it's, again, it's a fascinating way to get more insights about you as a soul, as a spirit, and past lives. And again, that's fascinating and interesting to you. And absolutely, there's no bad side effects to doing this multiple times. And whether that's once every 6 months or once a month, or I was at that Brian Weiss workshop last summer, and we did like 2 a day or so. I did one at Esalen not too long ago. And over the course of 5 days, I think we were doing like 2 a day, so somewhere we did around 8 or 10.
Yeah.
In the course of 5 days or so. And it's just, I guess it's sort of like looking at home movies, maybe.
Sure.
If that fascinates
Yeah, I can
you
see
and you're
that.
interested in your genealogy and you want to look more about where your grandparents came from, and so you have all these movies or books, genealogy books or something. And the more information you get, the more information you understand about where you come from, your heritage, your ancestry. And so it's sort of like that. The more information you get, the more information you have.
Yeah. So, well, tell us where people can find you, or like how you maybe recommend they navigate or approach your work.
Yeah, well, the best 2 ways. Well, there's the book, Past Lives Guidebook. Find that on Amazon, of course. And then the Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy.com website. And so Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy. And you work with people one-on-one, working on doing some retreats later in the year and things like that. Setting up a Zoom class for May or maybe June, when you're hearing this, I guess. But just keep looking, because I'll probably be doing Zoom classes over the course of the years coming up. But Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy is the place. And I'm happy to get on the phone, talk with you, or email to chat about this kind of work if you have questions about it, because it's a fascinating conversation. I mean,
It really
again,
is.
like I said,
We
we
barely
could do,
scratched the surface
yeah,
today.
we could do a 10-hour podcast and still probably have more questions than answers by the end of
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah. So, do you work with clients in person, remotely, both?
I do both. People find it really easy and comfortable to do it from home through Zoom. And in and of itself, I'm not like, like, as you know, you're not really fixing them. You're guiding
Right.
them and helping them. So
Yeah.
being in the comfort of your own home works really, really well. Of course, love doing it in person. If you happen to be in Flagstaff, Arizona, passing through, going to the Grand Canyon or in Sedona, because we're going to be doing some of the workshops and things later on. But I do a lot of the work through Zoom, and which is great because I work with people around the world. I work with people having to be in Tahiti and Switzerland and England, and it's not a flex or a brag, but it's just like, this is how powerful this is. Is that,
Yeah.
as long as we can get the time zones right, you can be anywhere
Yeah.
and have this experience because you're the one having this experience. I'm there to guide and to facilitate, to lifeguard, if you will. So it's really your experience and wherever you can be comfortable and relaxed. And even what the research shows, whether it's hypnotherapy, like clinical hypnotherapy or past life regression or talk therapy, psychotherapy, or life coaching or relationship counseling, or whatever it may be, a doctor's appointment, while the work you're doing, Zoom sessions work as well as in person, is what the research shows over the last 5 years. And there's actually been research that shows Zoom sessions work better because people feel relaxed and comfortable in their home. They feel safe in their homes, and they don't have to drive across town on a busy Friday afternoon to try to get to their appointment on time. So,
Right.
and when they're done, they're home.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. And especially with those longer sessions like we do in QHHT and like your mentor does as well. Like you would really want to make sure people are back in their body.
Oh, God,
if they've driven to you before you let them leave your office. So
yeah. Definitely want to make sure they're grounded and centered, and we take some time at the end to make sure that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I was gonna say too, one of the things that I love about this, and we didn't talk about it much, and we only have a few more minutes, but just for the listeners out there, I have practiced many modalities of different types of spiritual and energy healing, and I've had my own personal experiences with past life regression as well. And so when I came across this work, and I'm sure you found this too, because you mentioned it just a minute ago of we're not doing the healing. We are the facilitators for the healing to happen on the client's own terms. And they're working with their higher self and their guides. Dolores Cannon calls it the subconscious, the SC. But the point that I found so powerful and why I gravitated towards this work to become a facilitator myself is because I felt like it finally dissolved that dynamic of when you go to someone for like a Reiki session, let's say, like there's this element of like sort of like still like giving your power away to that person to quote heal you or fix you.
Yeah.
I mean, and even the best of us that try to still put the ball back in the client's court, there's still, I feel like, that subconscious dynamic there. But within this hypnotherapy and past life regression and this type of healing approach, it really is it's really solely in the client's hands. Like we are just opening up the mind to allow whatever is meant to come through for that healing to happen.
And it may be the difference between like Reiki or a massage. And you want that, and it's obviously very valid and worthy.
Sure. Yeah. There's still great modalities.
But this is more like maybe a yoga class. It's like, well, here's somebody guiding and facilitating, but you're doing the work.
Yeah.
And again, very valid and very worthy. And it's all, what's nice is just having this toolbox of, well, today I really need a massage. And today I really need a yoga class. And today I need a Reiki session. And today I need past life regression.
Yeah.
And they're different modalities that all have maybe a similar goal of just making you an awesome person.
Yes.
Creating healing.
Yes. Well, thank you, Craig, so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Again, like we barely scratched the surface. So I feel like there's so many more layers here we could talk about, but all listeners, go head on over to sacredmysteryhypnotherapy.com. Check out his book, Past Life Guidebook, on Amazon. And thank you so much.
You're
We'll
welcome.
hope to have you back soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me on Light Body Radio, where functional medicine meets intuitive healing and transformation happens on every level. If this episode resonated with you, please like, share, and if you're ready to go deeper, visit drlaramay.com to book a functional medicine consultation or an intuitive healing session. Whether you need to rebalance your body, clear your energetic blocks, or reconnect with your soul's purpose, I've got you. You can also follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Dr. Lara May for daily inspiration, energy updates, and healing tools. Remember, your healing is multidimensional, and so are you. Until next time, honor your body, trust your intuition, and activate your light.